Dan Hooker came out. He did the funniest damn interview. I don't even know if he meant to be funny. It was so lighthearted, and I really appreciate it because we have been left with what's Dan Hooker going to do? Meaning, what does he want to do? Hooker's a top guy. Hooker hasn't been less than a co-main event in 3 years and main evented several shows. Felder was a main event. Poirier was a main event. At the top of my head, he hasn't been less than a co-main event, right? Hooker matters. But Hooker threw his gloves into the octagon. How were we supposed to interpret that? So, somebody got a hold of Hooker, did a little bit of an interview. Hooker's still at Fight Island. He's got to stay there, I think it was like for 3 more weeks. Then he said he's got to go home, put a month in with a teammate who's training for a fight, which largely speaks to Hooker's character. And then there's something else about another 2-week quarantine, right? He's from New Zealand. I share that with you. Some of the rules there are different than maybe you could relate to, and that's why some of the rules for him are different. So at any rate, he said, well, I painted myself in a little bit of a corner. You know, when I threw my gloves in there, I was mad and upset, but I go back to the hotel and I realized there's nothing else I'm good at. So, I mean, right, it was just this lighthearted, funny interview, whether it was meant to be or not. And he said, I wasted 4 months of my life. I zigged when I should have zagged. I look terrible. I'm embarrassed. You know, these kinds of things. Like, well, let me stop you right there, Dan. Let me stop you right there. Because you didn't see the fight. You were in the fight. I saw the fight. And Dan Hooker did not look terrible. He looked like a guy that got caught with a punch that would have put down a mule. Right? It was the same thing when Masvidal knocked out Askren. Like, you can tease Askren if you're just that kind of person that likes that kind of a thing, but you couldn't have taken that shot either. There's just some punches you just can't take. The human body just can't. Anybody's going out. Hooker took one of those shots. And you have to understand, from a physical perspective, Hooker did some things very well. The people that were betting on Hooker were betting on the fact that Hooker could keep it on his feet. So the fact that Hooker lost while on his feet might bother Dan a little bit. But the other side of the coin is the people that were betting on Chandler thought Chandler was going to take him off his feet with his wrestling, which never happened. And as short as that fight might have been, Chandler would have liked to have taken him down and couldn't. Didn't see an opening, didn't get in there. So I'm only sharing for you, Hooker did do some things right. And one thing that the fence does, and these guys were up against the fence when Hooker took this shot. But the fence is relevant. If you're taking on a grappling heavy guy, that fence can serve as a tag team partner if you use it right. There's ways to get on the fence, sink your hips, adjust your heels and toes, and really stop a wrestler from going to work. The other part of the news of being up against the fence is you don't have anywhere to go. And from a striking standpoint, that's a great place to start striking, which is what Chandler did. I mean, you got to think about it from this perspective. A guy can move only so many ways, but when his back's against the fence, he now can't go that way. Coming forward is something he's not going to do. He's looking for space because he's taken on a wrestler. So not going to come forward. So now you're left with left, right, or stay the same. Had Hooker gone to his right, it would have taken some steam off the punch. Had he gone to his left, it would have added to the punch. Instead, he stayed the same, which gives Chandler a chance to hit him as hard as he can. I mean, those were the options that Hooker was up against when that hook came. Can't go backwards, not going to come forward. Love it if my body went to the right. Don't want to go to the left. Maybe I'll stay the same. He stayed the same. Chandler hit him as hard as he could. I mean, what's Hooker really got to be mad about? The outcome? Okay. I can understand that. The performance? No. He cannot be mad at the performance. There wasn't enough of it. There wasn't enough to be happy, sad, or in between. It was the same as Askren Masvidal. There's not really a way to be upset with yourself. Something happened that nobody could have taken. I happen to be the one that took it. I had the same reaction that everybody else would have had they been hit with that shot. So now what are we mad about? We're just mad about that it was in the first round? I don't know. That doesn't seem like something Hooker should be mad about. I don't see it that way. There was parts of his performance that looked really good, particularly stopping the grappling, particularly the footwork and movement. That was on his side. Made connection a few times with his legs. Chandler, also world-class athlete, former champion, multiple-time All-American, out there doing his job. I mean, it's a two-man sport. What do you want? You had two guys doing what they were supposed to do and what they were trained to do. We can figure out 15 minutes later whose idea worked better, or we could just figure it out right now. What's the difference? So I think as Hooker fans, we have some good news. Hooker is not done. The question is, what does he do now? That's not something that has to be answered in the short term. But if we are going to answer it in the long term, I'll still share my wish. I wish he would go to 170. I wish he would at least take a good look at going to 170. But there's plenty of very interesting things for Hooker. I mean, here, I'll throw you one just for fun. You looking for something to do? Hey, Cowboy, you busy in 3 months? Hey, Hooker. I mean, right, just by example. Did any of you just turn away and snicker and say you don't want to see it? I mean, just offering you, for example, look, the top guys in that division, it is iron on iron, but it isn't every division. And the only thing that happened is that Hooker was being showcased, which he deserved to be, along with other guys in that division. 55 was really put to the test that night. So you had some guys that go to the front of the class and some guys that are going to have to go to the back. But we knew that going in. It was a very high-risk night when your whole division is under the microscope. I don't accept Hooker being mad at Hooker. I don't accept that. He didn't see the fight. I saw the fight. I still don't think Hooker's seen the fight. He's wrong. He's wrong in his assessment. He did some things very well that night. He got hit with a shot that would have put any of us down. Next.